So for anyone who has not been paying attention at all in the last few years, can you just start by telling us what Redfin does? This is a softball to begin.
Redfin is a technology-powered real estate brokerage. We help people buy and sell homes.
So it's been a big 12 months. A few things have happened.
So I've heard. Redfin went public in July last year. We put it off as long as we could. Paul Goodrich, the chairman of the company for most of its history, will tell you that we had many opportunities to do it, but we decided that last year was the best time. And then we've just been busy rolling out a lot of different products over the past 12 months. It's been fun. It's been busy.
What is the new product you're most excited about?
Oh, well, that's a tough choice. We've got Redfin Mortgage, so we want to have a digital closing where people not only buy the house from us, but also borrow the money. And the reason we want to do that is because there's so much finger pointing when you close on a sale. If it's delayed, it could be because of the lender, or it could be because of the real estate agent. And when those two people work together on one platform, our technology platform, we can close faster. Ultimately, we want people to be able to buy a house as if it were cash. And then the other product that we've been working on is Redfin Now. That's become more competitive recently, but that's where we just buy the house from someone. So instead of hanging a yard sign and waiting a month for a buyer to come around, we put cash on the barrel.
And do you personally go and approve the houses that you buy?
I probably should, but I don't.
Okay.
We actually use an expert instead.
You're not that good at assessing houses? Is that the issue?
I think there are much better people at Redfin than I am.
So kind of size up Redfin for us. How many markets are you in? How many employees? How many of those are agents? Give us a feel
we
for
have
that.
about 85 markets, a few thousand employees. Most of them are real estate agents. So the key cultural challenge that we had in the beginning was just building a software organization with Google and Facebook engineers, and then hiring real estate agents from traditional brokerages and having those two groups work together. So for a long time, we were at war with each other. It was different camps in high school. It was different camps at Redfin. As a result, we shipped the wrong software to our real estate agents and didn't really make real estate more efficient, or our agents weren't able to communicate with our engineers about what they really needed. And now I think the crowning achievement of the company is just that we're able to talk to each other and really work together to make real estate better. So a few $100 million in revenue, growing about 30% year over year. Still losing a little bit of money, though.
You wouldn't be the only one in town.
We've gotten a long leash.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
How did you overcome that gap between the two different types of people working at Redfin?
Well, I just think you have to embrace being a real estate agent. I used to go to parties in San Francisco where I worked before coming back to Seattle, and people would say, look, it's Glenn, he's a real estate agent, and they'd make fun of me. And now I've really embraced that. I think it's an honorable profession, and if you honor the people you work with and respect them in this genuine way, people can tell. And if you're just pretending, people can tell that too. I know it was a silly moment, but there was this point when things were really dark, and Gordon Brown, the leader of the software team building software for our agents, came to work with "I love agents" emblazoned on this t-shirt, and he made everyone on his team do the same thing. And I thought it was really trite and kind of too obvious and over the top, but it wasn't. It worked really well.
Yeah, those are moments as a CEO where you're like, oh, I don't actually have all the answers.
Oh,
right?
yeah, I never believed that.
So what has changed in the company since going public, or for you personally?
Not very much. You know, sometimes I'll run into another mom or dad dropping the kids off at school, and they'll ask me how it's going. And I'll say, fine. And then they'll say, really? Huh? And they'll look at me as if I just lost my second-born child or something. And then I'll realize that the stock must have taken a dip yesterday. And it's hard to convince people that my well-being is not completely attached to the ticker. But the truth is that I haven't checked once Redfin's stock price. And the reason is not that I don't care what the company's worth. I want to invest in this business to make sure we create long-term shareholder value. But I just know I'll get addicted to it. And once you start tracking the ups and downs, it rules your life. it's enough of a roller coaster with me without that. So I think that hasn't really changed. Probably the only significant change is that more real estate agents apply for jobs now. It's gotten easier to recruit great agents from the industry. But other than that, we already had T. Rowe Price and Wellington and Tiger Global on our cap table 2 or 3 years ago. So the pressure has been with us for a long time. And for anyone who's running a venture-backed business or working in a venture-backed business, I do think it's important that you get Wall Street's perspective on your business. I still remember when these guys showed up at our office from a hedge fund, and they wanted to know when we were going to get to 15% operating margins. And I said, well, that's a long story. I don't know if you really have time. And then they said, we do. That's why we came here. And then I said, well, when's your flight? And then they looked at me and they said, bro, the flight's when we get back to the airport. I haven't been on a commercial jet in 10 years. And then I knew the true meaning of fear. And we just walked through every year how revenues were going to grow, and we weren't going to hire as many engineers as we wanted to, and we weren't going to hire as many accountants as we wanted to, and we were going to have to scrape for every penny. And if you don't have that discipline built into the company from a really early stage, I think it's hard to discover it on the day you go public. That was the real premise of Redfin's public offering, is that we knew how to make money. And you don't have to know that on day one, but you have to have an idea of how you're going to do it over time.
What do you think has been more critical to Redfin's success? The innovation in the business model that you've brought to the space, or the technology innovation?
Both. I think that I was completely focused.
It's an either-or question.
No, I know. Well, what I'll tell you is that I came at this as a software person. And so my only focus was on map-based real estate search. We invented that, and on all the software to make our agents more efficient. We've been working on that for a decade. And what I discovered is that a customer who actually worked for Google told me, all that software just doesn't matter if your real estate agent isn't any good. And so now the first bullet on the first slide of every board presentation is about Redfin's efforts to be the best employer in real estate. And so maybe that's the answer to your question. If we don't get amazing people, we're not going to really be able to prosper regardless of the software. And just in general, I think, we talk about this problem that Redfin had, building a culture that unites technology with all the other people in the world. That's not just a Redfin problem. It's not a problem that other tech businesses have. It's a Seattle problem. It's a US problem. The schism between technology and the rest of society is so toxic. I came from San Francisco, where people throw eggs at Google buses and feel completely divorced from what's happening at some of these amazing companies. And that's a city divided. This is what we have to avoid at all costs. And the reason I know so much about it is that it was a company divided when we were first starting out at Redfin. And healing that made everything else possible. And having that broken made everything else impossible. So I think people have been trying to pin me down on this question my whole life at Redfin. What matters more, a real estate agent or a software engineer? And if I ever said anything besides both, I'd forsake everything that we've worked so hard to unite.
We're going to revisit this topic.
All right.
Okay. Switching gears a little bit, your perspective on not checking the ticker and not obsessing about the daily fluctuations might make you unique as a CEO. What do you think has influenced that perspective? And maybe more broadly, what has influenced your leadership style the most?
Well, the person who influenced my perspective on that was my wife, who said, "You're crazy enough as it is. Don't get on that roller coaster. Don't put the family on that roller coaster." She was really worried when we went public that a Wall Street investor would sell 1 million shares and I'd come home and kick the cat. I don't even have a cat. I would never kick an animal. But we just had a serious conversation about how I can be the best father every day, how I can be the best leader every day. But my favorite advice really came from Brian McAndrews. It's a meeting that Paul Goodrich at Madrona set up. He was the CEO of Aquantive, and he ran Pandora for a while, and now he's back in town. But a long time ago, when we were nothing and he was the big deal that he still is, he met me for lunch at the Met, found out I was a vegetarian, chowed a steak anyway. And then he told me that I wasn't Steve Jobs, which I took as a great insult. 5, 10 years ago, all of us wanted to be Steve, this visionary who had all the best ideas in the company. And he said, you're just not that smart, so you're going to have to try another tactic. You're going to have to try being a nice person. Oh, I think I can do that, maybe. It's not as easy as it sounds, but it's something you can work on. And letting go of this idea that the best ideas are yours has been liberating for me. There are just so many times when people say, well, what do you think? And I have no idea what the right answer is. And I say, you should decide. And we make a better decision. And I don't always do that. I'm still very engaged in the business. But Brian's voice is always in my head.
I had to do a lot of research for this hard-hitting interview.
Okay, all right, uh-oh.
And I read a quote that you wrote a while back that said, most entrepreneurs are driven to the point of being miserable, but most leaders are a consistent positive force. It has been hard to be both. So what is your secret to staying positive?
I don't know. I mean, I think the people who work with me know that I have my dark moments. But it is the fundamental job of a leader to say, this is how we win. And I think you can tell people that there are lions and tigers and bears out there as long as you say, but this is how we win. It might be a triple bank shot, it might be a low percentage opportunity, but I think we can do it. And you can take people through hell if you have a vision of how you get to heaven. So part of it for me is just always having a really simple idea of what we need to do to win, no matter how improbable it is. And part of it is riding my bike every day. Even when it snows, I walk my bike to work. And the reason is that I'm in a seasonal business. And so about when it gets dark and rainy here, Redfin revenues go down about 40 or 50%. And I just have to get outside and get exercise. I've charted my worst days at work. They always come on about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. So you should just take care of yourself. Whatever you need to do to make yourself happy, you should do. But I do think it's the fundamental challenge. Behind a driven person is just an enormous amount of misery. You have to be miserable with the status quo to want to change it. And, Elon Musk was asked if he's bipolar. And he, by the way, might be just genuinely insane. But, I mean, people are surprised that he's making these extreme statements, and no one noticed that he was talking about colonizing Mars for years. But he was asked, are you bipolar? And he said, well, I'm not sure my reactions are extreme or if the situation I'm in is extreme. His company has billions of dollars of debt, and it's worth billions of dollars. Things could go either way for him, and it's not a small swing. So I feel the same way. But I'm really glad I have kids. When I called my brother on my wife's getting pregnant, I said, I'm worried I'm too crazy to have kids. I'm worried I can't be a good dad every day. And he gave me the only advice that could have reassured me, which was not, you're totally sane. It was, you'll be too busy to be depressed. You'll be too busy to worry about anything. It'll be fine. And that has turned out to be true. Like, you come home, you're really upset about something at work, you're standing there in the rain with water dripping off your helmet, and you see this bright scene in the kitchen of you and your kids, and you just think, I can't F with that. I've got to go crazy when I get in there and say how excited I am to see my kids. But if it was just me, I'd probably get a bag of Doritos and go down into the basement and cry myself to death.
I'm glad you brought up work-life balance so I didn't have to.
Yeah. Well, can I talk to you about work-life balance? Or
again?
you should talk to me. How do you do it?
I always get asked this question.
Oh, because you're a woman.
Right.
Well, my wife does that. No. So my wife is a researcher at Fred Hutch, and she works harder than I do, which is very hard to do, on work that is more important than mine. She rarely goes to bed before midnight or 1. Her boss gave this speech about how much it costs to keep the lights on in a research facility and said you should be working 60 to 80 hours a week with no apologies. Those folks over at the Hutch work harder than most of us in this room, and they do it for far less money, and I love them for it. You will know how important that work is at the end of your life when you need their help. So I know a lot of CEOs who struggle with work-life balance, but most of them have a spouse at home. And I don't. We both work a lot, but we get home for dinner at 6 o'clock. And we have dinner together, and we try to be completely present from 6 to 8. And we try to be completely present from 6 to 8 in the morning, too, when we have to get them ready for school and drop them off. And it's been the best decision we've ever made. Sometimes you have to work afterwards. Almost every night I get back online around 8:30. But I think life is fair, that for all the money I make, I should work really hard. And I do.
Good answer. I like the 6 to 8 trick.
Yeah, that's only 4 hours.
Yeah.
4 hours a day, you can do that. It's the best 4 hours of your day.
Yeah, and you get rewarded for that probably in many ways.
It's kind of a drag sometimes, but
I mean by...
it'll pay off later. No, I forgot that my kids could actually watch this video. It is the highlight of my miserable life.
This is being recorded. So switching gears a little bit, you brought up a couple issues around diversity and kind of the types of people who work at Redfin. Mm-hmm. What about diversity along kind of how we normally talk about diversity, gender mm-hmm. diversity, ethnic mm-hmm. diversity? How would you grade Redfin on the diversity front? And what could get better?
Well, we're a C. So about a third of our engineers are women. Our CTO is a woman, and she has really led that effort. And it hasn't been by creating a special program for women or having a larger bathroom or anything like that. It's actually been creating, by the way, that's not a joke. When you move into a new building, they ask you, what size bathroom do you want for the men or the women? And I say, what about equal sizes? And then I say, why do you ask? And they say, well, some video game developers want more room for the men because they have so many. So there are buildings that are sexist. I didn't know that was possible. Wow. But actually, I've been to a football game, so I do know that. Like, the bathroom lines are different. Anyway, so what I was going to say is that we've done reasonably well bringing women into the technology field, but not as well bringing racial diversity. So that's something that we've been working on for 1 or 2 years. And what I was going to say is that what really led to that increase was just creating the basic infrastructure of fairness, where you have career ladders, you have reviews, you put job postings online, you ask people to apply instead of just waiting for someone to raise his hand. And what you find is that you can make more money by treating people fairly, that it's actually an arbitrage opportunity. When a woman walks into Redfin, I think we're going to get her. And we need that. We're trying to recruit engineers against Facebook and Google. We can't pay quite as much as Facebook and Google, so we have to have a reason that this is a better place to work. And we've decided that one of the reasons this is going to be the best place for an engineer is it's going to be the most fair place. But where we've been challenged is just on racial diversity, where we've had initiatives the past couple of years and haven't done squat, really. We've added a few folks, but not enough. And I think it's a similar issue for Seattle. Eventually, you have to give up your liberal baloney about how you care about racial diversity if you don't act like it. It becomes hollow and hypocritical. And it's become a serious cultural issue for us. So we want to be the best place in the world for an engineer of any color to work. And I think right now we try to be that, but it's a little lonely. And we have to work a little harder for people of color to really feel welcome. And that's what we're trying to do.
I think a lot of us in the community have been excited to hear you speaking out on various issues that are meaningful to our industry and to our community. How do you decide when to speak out?
I don't know the answer to that question, even though you gave it to me in advance.
How much time do you need?
Well, we wrote about the head tax. We said that we're opposed to it, but that we're in favor of other taxes to deal with affordability and homelessness, because we think the tech community really has to work hard to reach out and find common ground with all the different folks in the city who are trying to make it a better place for everyone. And it cost me no end of grief. It ruined my week writing that. I got into beefs with people I love and respect. I didn't really focus on selling houses or serving customers or making software. I got emails from customers saying that if we weren't in escrow, we wouldn't be working with you now because we're so upset by this position. But I just remember a long time ago, Michael Jordan was asked to take a stand, and he said, well, I don't want to do that because the group I'm taking a stand against buys basketball shoes. And I thought he was such a coward. And now I'm that coward. But what I feel careful about is this. About half of Redfin presumably voted for Donald Trump and half voted for Hillary Clinton. And if I use the platform that we built together to espouse my personal political views, it's a dereliction of duty. It's saying that the company c'est moi, when it's really us. And so what's hard is figuring out when there's an issue that's really relevant. Let me give you one example. We were going to open a mortgage business in North Carolina, and then they passed that stupid bathroom law. We were going to create 300 jobs in North Carolina, and we decided to do it in Texas instead. And we sent a letter to the governor explaining our decision, but some folks at Redfin wanted us to call out the governor to take a public position. They said, you should have the courage of your convictions. And we didn't. And they were unhappy about that. And we didn't because calling people out doesn't often bring them over to your side. And we're not reaching out to the other side very well right now as a country. And so I don't know how to do that as a private citizen, and I think it's even harder to do it as a CEO when you represent people of all political stripes. And just because you're good at selling houses doesn't mean you know whether Donald Trump should have won or Hillary Clinton should have won. I'm not any more of a citizen than anyone else who works at Redfin. So mostly the default is to keep quiet and hope that history doesn't judge me for it.
What are our obligations as business leaders to look beyond the company? I mean, I think we've all seen in the past few months, companies are taking actions that are influencing society, and in some ways faster and more effectively than government can because of the speed at which they can do business. So how can businesses be part of positive change?
Well, I just think we have to say what we're for. That's what's really important. We have contempt sometimes for government. We say how inefficient it is. We have these lumbering bureaucrats in our minds. When those people are working for a fraction of what we earn because they really believe in it, and they're doing their best to solve a problem that's much harder than selling a house or shipping software. So I think we have to get behind some kind of initiative to solve the city's problems. When there's a misguided initiative, we can say, don't do that, but I just want us to say, do this instead. And if it's beyond our ken, because we're not sociologists or political scientists or whatever, then you have to support the people who were elected and say, well, that might not be exactly what I would have done. I would prefer that you'd done it a slightly different way, but that's just how democracy works. And we should try to support it. And for me, it's painful because I do think some of these initiatives aren't what I would do. And sometimes I want to prove how smart I am by coming up with a better idea. But that's harder than it looks, and it's mostly destructive. If we don't do anything, I've seen this movie before. I've seen San Francisco turn into a bohemian city that was politically diverse, that was racially diverse, that was economically diverse, into a place that's just pure tech people. And it was miserable. It was such a scene. And Seattle, when I got here again, it had Weyerhaeuser and Boeing and Starbucks and Nordstrom. You'd go to dinner and you'd meet people who weren't just another texter, and that felt good. And I just want to keep it that way, and I don't think it's going to happen by itself. And if we think we're smarter than everybody else, we should figure it out. And if we don't, we should let other people do it.
Would you consider running for office? Because I would vote for you.
No. I would be miserable. Like, just being at this lunch table and having to talk to strangers is fun, but then when I'm done, I get back to my computer and I feel like I'm actually doing something. I tell my wife when I come home that we shouldn't even call it work, we should call it talk, because all I did was talk. And then one time I told her I should get some pom-poms, because mostly my job is to encourage other people to go do it. And then she said, instead of, no, you're much more important, she's like, you should do that. So that would be another level of pom-pom for me that I probably couldn't bear.
Okay, so this is the State of Technology Luncheon, so we'll just get back to technology.
Wait, can I say one more thing? The real reason nobody in business goes into politics is because everybody hates you the second you go into it. If Donald Trump ever had a good idea, nobody in this room would give him credit for it. If you're Jenny Durkin, she's a good person, but there are now people who think she's an idiot or a sellout. She's not. And the more contempt we heap upon the people who try to do public service, the less good people will ever want to go into public service. It's really true. All right.
I'm just sitting here stunned right now. Okay.
She's making fun of me now.
So back to Redfin or to the real estate industry. So what emerging technologies are you excited about? What do you think will change things in the future for your company or for your business? Are you going to start transacting in Bitcoin?
I am not excited about Bitcoin. I think it's an outrage that in an era of global warming, there are racks of servers next to the Columbia River. Like, I wish I could explain to the salmon that we have created a dam generating hydroelectric power so that we can generate a fake currency. Like, how would they feel about that? So no, I know there's sort of some disenchantment with government, some concern about fiscal policy, but I just have a hard time with Bitcoin. The thing that I'm most excited about is actually just hardware to visualize listings. It's a bummer to have to visit a house, and it gets better and better every year trying to transport people into the house so that they have an experience of what that's really like. And that, to me, is exciting. And there's all sorts of ridiculously expensive gear for creating and then experiencing that. We just need to make it really cheap and really easy. So I'm excited about that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so I have one last real question before I ask you the
rapid fire.
The rapid fire. I think you're one of the most approachable and relatable CEOs in our region, and a lot of us can aspire to achieve what you've achieved. What is left for you? What do you want to achieve with the rest of your career or your life, maybe beyond Redfin?
Well, wait a minute. Redfin has 13 years of losing money, so I'd like to make at least a nickel for our shareholders. Can't give up. Like when people say congratulations, I just say, we still haven't made money. There are companies in real estate that are 10 times bigger than we are. They're trying to squash us every day. I don't feel like it's mission accomplished. I'm not wearing a jumpsuit on an aircraft carrier here. I feel like there is so much left to do. And let me tell you, I've gotten to the other end of that rainbow. I worked at Plumtree. I started this enterprise software company where the software we shipped, the new products that we released, just didn't make a difference to our customers and didn't affect our sales. And it was the most depressing moment that basically it was a solved problem. It had become a commodity market. Larger companies with bigger sales forces were going to win. But when I think about, oh, is real estate basically as good as it could possibly be? No way. I have finally found a problem that I could spend the rest of my life working on. It's so big, it's so emotionally important, it's such a great mission. And what I tell my wife is that they shoot horses, don't they? And what that means is that it's a young person's game, and eventually the board is going to figure out that Bridget Fry or Adam Weiner or Scott Nagel or Chris Nielsen, that the people, the fantastic people on our team might be able to run the company better than I can, and I just hope that I figure it out first. But I really, really love the job, and I feel like we're just at the beginning. I get tired sometimes, I get despondent about it, but mostly I worry that I'll get taken out of the game before we've won, and we're a long way from winning. So I don't have any second act. I'm worried about it. I took some time off between Plumtree and Redfin, and it was miserable. Really miserable. I just didn't know what to do with myself. I missed the team. I didn't have a sense of mission. I had a sick older brother, and I watched daytime TV with him, and I wanted to kill myself. It was terrible.
So you're where you should be.
I really am. I mean, I don't know about this stage, but generally.
Okay, I hope these questions are easier than that other one you couldn't figure out the answer to. These are the rapid fire.
Let's do it.
Okay. The average price of a Seattle home in 5 years.
$1.2 million.
Did everybody get that? Okay. Besides your phone, the tech gadget you're most addicted to.
Well, that was in the intro. It's my bike. I don't know.
Is that a gadget?
It's a wondrous, magical machine. I get to work. The amount of power I have to put into the bicycle to get to work is less than the amount of power required to toast a single piece of bread. It's an amazing machine. We just have gotten used to it.
Superhero you most resemble.
I mean, how does anyone answer this question? Look at me. I don't resemble any of them.
Spider-Man?
No. I mean, sort of Peter Parker before he got bit.
Favorite Pacific Northwest vacation spot?
Methau Valley. It's this magical hidden place. It's
Not
amazing. If you
anymore.
haven't been there, you should go. What?
Not after this.
No,
We're all
nobody will
going.
go.
Cooking or dishes?
Oh, neither or both. If you cook, you have to do the dishes.
How is that fair?
If your spouse cooks, that person has to do the dishes, because there are some people who can use a small number of utensils and pots. And then there are other people who go effing crazy. I tell my wife it's like communism, and she's so crunchy. She's like, "Is that bad?" I just feel like you should own your own dishes.
We don't remember that.
But we don't, it's like I cook sometimes and do the dishes, and then she cooks sometimes. And
I've only ever seen you grill.
Really? I'm a vegetarian.
Veggie burgers.
Yeah. Or I cook it for other people.
Night owl or early bird?
I'm a little bit of both.
Non-committal, okay. Pizza or burgers?
Pizza,
Netflix or YouTube?
neither. I mean, come on, it's TV. How good could it be?
Or Amazon?
Amazon Video or just Amazon? Like buying stuff is cool. Do you guys ever think, like, you know how you go to the grocery store? Oh, there's Amazon, thank you. You know how you go to the grocery store and you think all of this is going to become poop? In the same way, I see everything coming through the front door, and I try to explain that since our house is of a finite size, an equal amount has to be going through the back door. We now have a second recycling bin because of Amazon. And by the way, it's free. I resisted it for like 5 years, and then I found out it was free, and so knock yourself out.
You just ruined grocery shopping for me.
Sorry.
Seahawks or Mariners?
Mariners.
Okay. All right, and on that note, you've just disenchanted all the Seahawks fans in the room.
I mean, oh, you can't win with that question.
It was a setup. Thank you so much, Glenn.
Thank
so much
you.
Fun.